Hey, it's Chris, Liege of Games. Let's talk one of the most hyped games in a long time. Now, obviously, it's going up against a lot of other hyped games right at the same time and crossing paths with many of same reputation, but let's talk, should you back Awaken Realms' Lords of Ragnarok? Is it right for you? What do you need to know? Pros, cons, how does it compare to Hellas? Everything else that I can offer you. So, without further ado, let's just get right into it. Let's go straight to the page itself so we can get talking about it in the first place. So full disclaimer, right from the get-go, I am backing this right now. Am I going to keep it, though, is the big question. I mean, and that's why I follow along in the first place, is to get more information, just like you guys, so I can figure out finally, at the very end, because that's what often these campaigns will come down to, especially for me, or if you're like me, where I go, you know what, I like the idea of this, but do I actually love it? So, let's talk about it. Lords of Ragnarok. This is the spiritual, the sequel, expansion, all wrapped up into one of Lords of Hellas. And you can make the argument that one of Awaken Realms is, really first big standout hits. Raising a ton of money, having a ton of backers. But what do you need to know about it in the first place? Sci-fi, Nordic, area control, multiple ways to victory. Amerithrash at its core with a little bit of action optimization. You're going to be building monuments, hunting monsters, and fighting in battles. This is a persons on the map game at its core and in its nutshell. And so the question is, though, apart from the Awaken Realms aura, apart from the absolutely outstanding, one of the best in the industry miniatures, does the core of the actual game from a play style standpoint work for you? And the other thing that is always the elephant in the room is right here. We'll just skip down for a second here. $115 for this. For this very aesthetically pleasing plastic tabletop scenery. Is it worth it? Now, again, as they say up here, going back up, you have an asymmetric hero, you have their army. It's not going to be 2 hours. If this is anything like Hellas, because frankly speaking, it looks just as complex with a little bit even more complex at times compared to Hellas, it's not going to be 2 hour play, especially the first time or two. As with all area control style games like this, again, this is going to be a benefit from repeated play. This is not a one-off game. This is a meta, evolving, learning, stylistic strategy with a lot of tactics style of game. And because of that overhead, you have to have a group that is willing and able to do it from that side of things too. This is not just a pick up and once play and have a great time El Grande as the mother of all of these. So what else do you need to know? Now, obviously, this has heavy inspiration and heavy thematic incorporation, but it also has heavy ties to its predecessor. When we talk about this, we see a little bit of everything that you're getting. These are all the monsters. These are the armies that you're going to be having, including the Drakkar model, which is going to be something else to help you in each situation. The heroes themselves that you will be having as your asymmetric team leader. And then we get the real core of the actual situation here. We get a much bigger sized, and correct me in the comment section as always, but this gives me, when I look at this map right here, this gives me very, 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 very strong vibes of Blood Rage, right? Central zone, sort of where this action wheel is going to be taking place, and then a Ragnarok influence at the end, whereas in this situation, unlike Blood Rage, where it just blows up an area that cannot be used, it's changing the end victory conditions in that sense. And, I mean, stretch goals. You're going to get Awaken Realms. Now, the question is, what is this all going to look like? Because unlike all of the other Awaken Realms projects that we have seen up until this point, they have all had monetary value goals. They've had some reveals, but this is all, as opposed, right now at least, at the time of filming this, unlocks, just reveals. And so how do you feel about that? Again, I'm going to argue that I am completely fine with that because I want it to be what they want it to be, not dependent on false stretch goals as we've seen too much of lately, which causes campaigns that are funded but not truly funded to actually cancel after having their funding. We're just going to go straight in the order that they're presenting it to us. And again, I hate this order, to be very frank with you guys. GameFound, I love this. I hate the actual order because I want to see all of this stuff right here. I want to see reviews, gameplays, gameplay highlights. I want to see that up at the top. Because ultimately, I'm getting a game, right? I'm not getting a prize. I'm getting a game. And so that's the problem with this. Now, the question is going to be, and as always with the Awaken Realms, the best value is going to be this core pledge. The best value is by far and away going to be the core pledge, because if it's anything like their other properties, especially something like Nemesis nowadays, that the core pledge is, without any of the stretch goals, is probably going to be the same as what this is at retail going forward later. And this is where you're going to get the most value. This is where you're going to get the most bang for your buck. Now, you can always get their Sun Drop, which has become more and more desired, especially for people like me who don't paint. Now, again, this Mythic Pledge has some of the superfluous non-gameplay essentials, the art book, the enhanced runes, and the terrain. So, hopefully getting Sun Drop without that is somewhere in between. And you can get this little hero if you were following beforehand, otherwise it's an extra couple euros, and the cosmetics that we just talked about. So, now we get into a little bit of this. Now, we have basically 3 playthroughs, and that's okay. And with the latest update, there are 2 more as well. But again, Man vs. Meeple is usually a preview, and this is more of a gameplay guide side of things. So I like that, but the one big concern I have is rulebook. And I'm going to skip down here for a second to talk about this because it ties in with this. If this is that far advanced and along, I want to see a rulebook. And we always talk about this with all of my other crowdfunding campaigns. We always mention, they got to have the gameplay. They got to have the rulebook. And yet here we are raising how much money? Raising, well over $1 million, and there's no rulebook. And I don't find that acceptable, to be honest with you. But I hear this mentioned all the time on the small projects. Well, you got to have a rule book. You got to have a rule book. But sometimes these big projects get a pass on it. And so we have to hold them to the same standard. The other thing that we have to be aware of here, and this is my biggest concern with Awaken Realms, and they even pointed out right here, Awaken Realms, look at all these other games that we did. All of these games, except for War of Mind, 2-wave shipping, and to be fair, a couple of these, like Tainted Grail, and the other one that's not on here, noticeably absent, Etherfields, the second wave having some issues and corrections, especially with Etherfields. And so that is my biggest concern with this. And maybe that's also what we're seeing with some of these stretch goals, is that maybe for once, for the first campaign, they are staying in their lane. And they are going, this is the focus of what we're doing. This is what we're staying on. We are trying to keep this more consolidated because you can make the argument that the others were just too massive in scope. Too massive. And it led to bloat. And it led to the whole Etherfield situation with the board and the fact that it didn't get addressed until after the first wave was getting reviewed extensively at the backers side of things. And now I give them a lot of credit because they also said that we're going to redo it for the wave 2, but now it's set back the wave 2 or the single wave shipping for folks like myself, gosh knows how many months. Because if you look down here at the bottom, skipping back to the shipping section, right? Still 2 waves, folks. And if you're getting split shipping with whatever this core is, again, it's not going to be for probably a year. And then the other wave might not be for almost 2 years. Now, they say that it's about a year and a half, but let's be honest, none of these have been on time. None of these have been close to on time, especially with their scope, especially with the multi-language situation. And so if you're not English speaking, you should be putting out an extra year on that probably at this point. Which begs the question, again, tying back into, I have all the cosmetic stuff. I've got a couple playthroughs. The rule book, where's the rule book? And consequently also, why not just wait until you're closer to a finished product to come? Because if it's really that good and people are really that hyped, this amount of funding isn't going to drastically change. And if you can supply some of that extra stuff and maybe get it all in one wave, you can maybe even entice people even more. That's my concern. My other concern with this is when we talk about the pledge, when we talk about this, again, the other question is going to be right now, you see 2 pledge levels. ISS Vanguard was the same way at the beginning. CMON runs it the same way. Are we going to see other expansions? Is this not going to be as streamlined in terms of this stuff? I don't know. Because ISS Vanguard all of a sudden had the expansions pop up and they all popped up and then the price point went up overall. Because the big elephant in the room, like I said, is the fact that this costs you $115. You can buy several very, very quality standalone area control games at retail side of things for the total of this and get them within the next couple days or a week. And are you willing to pay that much for aesthetic, for the latest hotness? Because also, let's call it what it is. It is that. Is it going to be 2 to 3 times better than the games that are out there currently? Aesthetically, sure, without a doubt. But is it addressing some of the issues in terms of the monster hunting where you can snipe kill and sort of steal them at the end? Is it going to address the difficulty with building some of those monuments that Hellas went towards? Is it, at its core, adding too much of this stuff? There's too much going on. It takes the streamlined potential version of Hellas and makes it just that much more complicated, that much longer, that much more of a learning curve, and that much harder to get to the table. Because in the end, like I said at the very beginning, what's going to get to the table and what's going to get played is the most important aspect of this, period. And if you can't get it to the table, it's just a shiny dust collector. That's my concern. Now, with some of this stuff, again, I would say it's a vast improvement. With those monsters I just mentioned, having a boss monster, having Loki be the final boss is great. Having the monsters controlled by the players so they play smarter and you can't just single-handedly go for that easily is great. The Ragnarok at the end potentially changing the victory conditions is great. I'm not sure what to make of the alliance side of things that they say. I could see that working. I could also see it being sort of like the alliance situation in Rising Sun, where what if you play with an odd number? Does it work out as well in terms of the cooperation side of things? Or is someone literally or even metaphorically going to be left out from that side of things and making it a more difficult or less endearing experience? Something, again, to consider. Because as I have also stated in many other games in the last year that I have been looking heavily at, frankly speaking, probably the most Kickstarter pages of anyone on the internet, looking at 20 plus games every single week for the last 50 plus, almost 60 weeks. So, 2,000 games, something very eerily like Kingdom Rush, like Nemesis, like something along those lines is this a 2.0 version? Do you need both Hellas and Ragnarok in your collection? Whereas with Nemesis, I can easily make the comparison that I think they are distinctly different enough. I think there's enough going on separately that you could have them both. Kingdom Rush, I can't really say that. I really think Kingdom Rush, the second campaign on GameFound, is distinctly better, and I think it completely solves or fixes some of the issues with the first one, and I think you could probably get rid of your first one and just have the second one and be fine going in at that second one. Now this one, again, it's a mix. It's so close, but it also has some twists on it that I'm not sure it almost separates itself enough on the surface, at least right now, at this very moment, with how much we know, to necessarily justify a $150 to $200 price point, especially if you own Hellas in the first place. I mean, this is going to be a big expansion, like I said here. I mean, it's just going to be a big question mark on that side of things. And you may not know until we get a rule book to see, exactly how things entail. Because as good as gameplay is to watch, gameplay invariably doesn't cover everything that you're going to want to know about the game in the first place, where a rulebook really will. So, where are things at right now? I don't know. Things are very interesting. The pedigree is there. But is it worth 2 to 3 times the value of the best area control games out there in the first place that have already been proven to be best for this? For a very aesthetically pleasing one that may range from very good to super, super awesome, but you don't know. And that's the gamble on this side of things. So me personally, where am I at? I have no idea. This is, like I mentioned at the beginning, this is going to be a last minute decision for me. Because at my core, I am not really an area control person. Blood Rage, Rising Sun, Lord of Hellas. I have owned all of those, and I have gotten rid of all of those. Again, not bad games, but just doesn't click as well with me. And so I am going back and forth on this one because, again, with something like this, you are always trying to fill that board game shaped hole in your heart for the perfect game. And so for me, a perfect game being the area control that I will actually really enjoy. And with this one, I don't know if that is truly shaped as a whole, the size and the dimensions of Lords of Ragnarok. Am I intrigued by it? Absolutely. Do I love the look of it? Without a doubt. Nordic theme, so much more appealing to me than Greek even. But is it worth that price point? That's the question. Now, again, I like the way that the campaign is structured in the sense that they're not FOMOing right now, at least. And at that core pledge, you're going to get the essential extra big box expansion that the other Awaken Realms projects and campaigns have been known for. And again, is clearly always the best value. But again, the question is going to be how many other expansions pop up between here and the end, and how tempted are you going to be by them if 2 or 3 of the other ones pop up like they did last time, like they did in ISS Vanguard. Because the difference and the difficulty with this game is because there are so many ways to win, it's going to require more plays in order to figure that out. Which means you have to have a group that's wanting to play this repeatedly over and over again. And that, again, lies the core of the problem, or the dilemma. Is that what your group does, and that is how you go towards things? It's going to be interesting. It's going to be a wild ride. I'm following right along with you guys. So, as always, hopefully that was helpful a little bit insight into where my brain goes when I'm looking at this and deciding whether or not it's for me or whether or not I'm going to back it. There you go. Thanks for watching. Thanks for clicking. If you liked it, click subscribe. Help me get higher so I can talk about more things like this. Stay classy. Have a great day. At least I didn't knock a box top on me this time.